Hi everyone, welcome back. This is a really heavy set of books I have right here, so I'm going to put them down very quickly. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Nidia B. I do this channel called The Curated Shelf, which is all about the books that I like to read, fiction and non-fiction. It's about things that I come across which I think might be helpful for readers and for writers. And today, instead of focusing on the content that I like to read and put into my mind, I thought I would look at the content that I like to write and create. And this is one of my journals that I've had from a few years ago, and the rest as well that you just saw there. And basically, I just thought it would be good to talk about journaling and why it's important, why I think it's important, how I think it can be of help. And yeah, so stay tuned, click like, share, comment on my video. Please hit subscribe as well if you haven't already, and thank you for joining me. Okay, so I think there's a lot of videos out there on journaling, and I have seen also a lot of videos on bullet journaling, and I think they're absolutely amazing, these fantastic spreads that are being created, and the beautiful art that I see, the collaging, the stickers, the beautiful pens that are used, and the paints, and oh my god, I can go on for ages. And I have some bullet journals myself, which I've tried to fill and do all kinds of doodles and whatnot in. But today I'm just going to be talking about very simple journaling, i.e., as you can see here, just like putting pen to paper and just kind of like writing out my thoughts and the content at the end of a day or the beginning of a day or in the middle of a day. It doesn't really matter. But why do I do it, and what's the point? So this subject came about because I've had 2 or 3 conversations this week with people, and it's people who, you know, it's just very normal. We've just hit the first week of autumn, the first week of going back to school, going back to work. Of course, we're still all under certain quarantine conditions. So, you know, I've got friends, I've got colleagues, I've got myself dealing with the new situation, but, you know, not being a normal, what we call here in Belgium, rentrée, not being a normal kind of like return to work, but of course with a lot of nuances and a lot of changes and measures coming to place. And you know, I could feel that there was this kind of like buzz, but it was quite different because everybody, whether they're a mum or a dad or an office worker or a student, or working in a shop or whatever, there was just a case of we're dealing with you know, a new week, going back to school basically, but it's in these conditions. And I could just feel this frustration that many people had actually. And whatever the situation that they're dealing with, I found myself quite a few times saying, have you thought about kind of like emptying out your thoughts? And that's when I realized that perhaps a video on journaling might be helpful. So I'm going to go through several points of why I journal and my journey into it, and also some tips on how I make sure that I do it, because otherwise it's not going to happen. So I got into journaling quite a while back in my late 20s. Before that, I wasn't doing it, and what I found was that I would just have this enormous volcano of thoughts that would be created in my head, and then it would just be like an explosion and it would come out in different ways. And I also had difficulty in organizing my thoughts and kind of like discerning what really, you know, I want to focus on, what I need to let go of. And there were some people who suggested, you know, why don't you try journaling and just put pen to paper every night and empty out your thoughts. And yeah, that was another one. I've had insomnia for most of my life, and journaling was a part of it. Journaling was definitely a part of it. I'm someone that can be awake till 3 o'clock in the morning, pacing the floorboards, and then somehow fall asleep at 6, and, you know, going into work I would be kind of like half dead, and it's just not a healthy way to function and be. So I think journaling has become a huge part of my life. And so yeah, that was the story into why I began journaling. But what's happened since then? So first of all, I discovered that if I made journaling into a huge activity of making it kind of like overburdened with, it needs to look pretty, there can be no mistakes, it has to be in the most beautiful journal possible, and I would buy a journal and then never touch it because it was just too nice to actually use. And you know, that definitely happened. And then it came to a point where it's like, but I still need to write. So I actually began journaling on really plain A4 paper pads or A5 paper pads. It was just really, really simple. And I also kept a little A6 pocketbook in my purse all the time. But I actually began journaling on the basis of not using anything pretty because I just wasn't doing it basically. And what I realized was when I took the pressure off, I began to just write. And sometimes it just didn't make sense. Sometimes it would not even be complete sentences, but it just didn't matter because what I realized was the more that I wrote, the more I understood what I was thinking actually. And some of the things that came up in my writing weren't things that I was quite aware of. So the subconscious was actually coming up to the conscious level, or however you want to put it. But basically, there were things that were coming out on paper that I just hadn't really seen before and acknowledged. So that was a core part of like my first part of my journey, which was basically to not make the task burdensome. Secondly, I've just mentioned it before, just in the first part, but I didn't put down a specific rule of when exactly I would journal. I definitely needed to start writing in the evenings before going to bed because I had just so many thoughts in my head and it was helping me to sleep. But I also found that sometimes it was helpful for me to do some writing first thing in the morning or in the middle of the day. So literally like around lunchtime when things would build up in my head, I would literally go to the park or, you know, when I'm grabbing a sandwich in the cafe outside of the office and sit there with my small notebook and just make notes then. But that really helped as well, just to start doing a check-in in the day. And I didn't have to wait all the way till the evening to release that pressure. So that was the second thing. And thirdly, one of the key things that I personally had for myself was my journaling didn't have rules. So I've just mentioned this, but basically it didn't have to be long sentences or even a story or even an update on something specific. It could just be pouring out my thoughts, making a list. Sometimes it would just be an appreciation or a gratitude entry. Sometimes it would be even doodles. Sometimes it would just be frustration and anger. I mean, sometimes it would be in such a sense that I couldn't even read what I'd just written, but it didn't matter. I basically had no rules for what was going to come out on paper as long as I just allowed myself to be able to write or express in some ways within those pages. And fourthly, the thing that I want to mention is that my journaling has always been kept private for me, and that's been really important for me. I know some people have expressed that the fear of people finding their journals, so they don't do it, or they only do electronic versions and then delete everything. For me, it was really important for me to have a space which allowed me to be able to journal and keep it safe, and just basically, it might not even be something I look back on, but it was just helpful for me to be able to put it on paper because there was something very cathartic about putting ink to paper. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, it's been really important for me to allow that expression. So yeah, so these are my tips around journaling, and I've just realized, you know, this is a very short video in some ways, but I just thought it'd be helpful for me to make it. The other thing I want to say is that as much as I began with like really boring really boring journal copies, as time went on, I realized that I did want to write in my pretty notebooks that, you know, you see here, sorry, this way around. And yeah, I began to really just like express myself in, you know, the books that I'd been keeping aside and using them. And I realized that that was a part of also the therapeutic nature of journaling, that it was okay to use these beautiful notebooks because I was putting in there things that were just basically helpful and important, or just my own heart. So why not keep them in something pretty? And the more I made mistakes, or the more I needed to cross out or use correction for it, the more real it was actually. So again, just taking that pressure off and then allowing myself to use all the beautiful stationery I'd bought became more important. So what are your thoughts on journaling? Do you like to keep it simple? Do you like to not journal? I'm also just putting a quick disclaimer in here that I am aware these days that some people, for them, writing is not really the best option. And some people like to do voice drops to themselves or some kind of audio recording to themselves. And I think that's also beautiful. It's just a way of expressing out loud what that person needs to say, or just putting it out there. So again, just let us know in the comments what you do in terms of writing and expressing yourself, and perhaps also you're someone that prefers to sketch, and I've heard people also say that, that I actually sketch on paper my thoughts rather than write them out, and I think that's an amazing, like, what a gift. So I would love to hear from you regarding journaling, especially as we move in the northern hemisphere into cooler months. I know some of us are going to be cooped up at home, and perhaps the paper is a really good way to express yourself, or some kind of audio recording. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you, and thank you again for joining me, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what you have to say. Thank you.